Greetings. Hey, thanks for joining us here. It's the Business of Agriculture podcast with me, your host, Damian Mason. Got a great show for you today, a very topical and seasonal show for you because we're going to be talking about Christmas trees. That's right, the old Tannenbaum. We're not going to sing "Oh Christmas Tree," but we might be verging on it because that's how excited I am about this episode. Got wonderful guests. I've got a Christmas tree producer, and I've got the executive director of the National Christmas Tree Association that are going to be joining us. Before we get to them, I want to remind you that this episode of the Business of Agriculture is brought to you by Harvest Profit, a software solution for your agricultural enterprise. You've got millions of dollars of capital deployed in your agricultural operation. Don't you need a software solution that can make sure you know where your dollars and cents are coming and going? Of course you do. Go to harvestprofit.com and see what you can do, how you can improve your business with the right software for your operation. I am so excited. I got Tim O'Connor, Executive Director or CEO, you can give me your exact title, with the National Christmas Tree Association, and Casey Grogan of Silver Bells Tree Farm in Oregon. First off, Mr. O'Connor, thanks for being on the Business of Agriculture.
Well, thank you, Damian. It's Tim, and it's Executive Director.
Executive Director. And tell me real quickly, what does the National Christmas Tree Association do?
Well, we're the advocate organization for the farm-grown Christmas tree industry. So like typical agricultural associations, top priority on our list is being the voice, the spokesperson for the industry, which, as you said, Christmas trees are unique. We have a lot of interaction with the media at the Christmas season. Everybody wants a Christmas tree story. They're not all positive, so we have a lot of engagement with the media. We do the public policy work. We lobby the federal government agencies. We advocate for and defend against, public policy and regulatory actions that will favor or harm the industry. And, we have a membership of growers. We also have some allied industry, suppliers to the industry, like most associations do, that support us. But our primary goals are those, to be that advocacy voice for the industry, whether it's public policy or the media or, in any stream of discussion like that.
Kate, thank you. Casey Grogan, a Christmas tree grower in Oregon, Silver Bells Tree Farm. Tell me about you and tell me about Silver Bells Tree Farm.
Well, Dad started the farm when I was a baby, and so I've grown up kind of in the industry. And we're in Silverton, Oregon, which is in the foothills of the Cascade Mountains, kind of where the Cascades meet the Willamette Valley. And most of our trees are grown on kind of secondary farm ground. We produce about 400 acres of Christmas trees, primarily grow noble fir and Nordman fir.
Okay. A couple of things. You just said your father began the operation, so you're second generation, and you said secondary farm ground. Okay, so I got somebody listening to this that's in the food processing business. I got somebody listening to this that's in the cranberry bogs in Massachusetts. What do you mean?
Secondary farm ground would be sort of up in the hills of the Cascades, so rockier ground where traditional crops wouldn't be produced. The Willamette Valley has some of the most fertile agricultural land in our country and produces every kind of crop you can imagine. On the foothills, we're just above it there on rockier ground. And so really the only things you're going to find up here are Christmas trees, grass seed, and a couple new crops moving in, such as hazelnuts and wine grapes.
Got it. So the 400 acres that you have would have possibly been pasture or something that was not. You took some of your subpar ground, if you will, and said this is going to be Christmas tree acres. So do you have other acres down in the valley that are your prime stuff?
No, we don't. We're all up in the hills. Noble fir and Nordman fir actually prefer the secondary ground like that. They need a little elevation to them. They like well-drained soil that's slightly sloped. And so they actually do better up there. You'll find Douglas fir, grand fir, some of the other species like that down in the valley.
I see. All right, we're going to talk about species of trees, but big overview, because it's always fun for people to do overview. I've got friends of mine that listen to this that aren't ag people, and they use this as a resource for ag stuff. Give me some numbers. Casey is in Oregon, and Tim, you told me before we started recording, Oregon is the #1 Christmas tree producing state. Is that accurate?
That is accurate.
Give me the top 5.
The top five, and I can rattle off pretty easily here. Oregon is number one. North Carolina is number two. Michigan is number three. Pennsylvania is number four. And Wisconsin is number five.
Okay, now the thing about Christmas trees is it's harder to ship a Christmas tree probably than it is to ship a deck of cards. So you named a bunch of states there. Oregon's number one producer. And I would think of, when I think about what Mr. Grogan just described as Christmas tree habitat, the right kind of growing conditions, we got rocky, slightly elevated places, all over the country. But Oregon could probably produce enough to cover a lot more than they do. Is transportation the reason that we have them in Pennsylvania? Because Pennsylvania can supply the Northeast? Is that what's going on there?
It might be some of it. I think the balance of the industry has developed where, like other sectors of agriculture, there's areas of specialization. There are growers who grow to sell to wholesale buyers. And so they grow bigger acreages, they cut trees, they load them on semi trucks, they deliver them to buyers who operate retail locations. And then there are growers who work on the smaller end of the scale. They have consumers come to their farm. In the industry, we call them choose and cut farms. Mm-hmm. Consumers come to the farm, they choose a tree, and they cut it. And so primarily when you look at the East, outside of North Carolina, what you're looking at is a larger footprint of choose and cut operations, where there's more population. So there are farms closer to populated areas, and many of those growers are selling their trees direct to consumers rather than shipping wholesale. Whereas in the West, the business has developed to be primarily the wholesale business, and they're shipping trees other places. And North Carolina does a lot of wholesale shipping as well.
A lot of shipping. Okay. Casey, yeah. I'm assuming your business model is you grow trees, you cut them. You tell me about your business model, but yours is not direct to consumer. Like mom and dad and the kids don't come out and pull a sled around with a hatchet at your place, right?
Yeah, that's correct. We're a wholesale grower. So we're shipping everything in 53-foot over the road semi trucks direct to whomever our end retailer is, whether that's, most of our customers are independent retailers. We ship to garden centers, small chain stores. We'll sell to other growers so that they can mix the trees in their yard and send them off to their customers as well.
Okay, so you sell to other growers that maybe produce trees, but they don't produce Douglas or Noble. Or is that what the two you said yours are? Noble and
Nordman fir.
Noble and Nordman. So there's somebody that doesn't produce Noble and Nordman, and they say, we want to be able to satisfy our customer base. So you're swapping with them. Is that the deal?
There's a lot of swapping that goes on. It's not always that. It's just meeting the numbers. It's always a numbers game. So if they don't have enough Noble fir to satisfy their customer base, they'll buy them from me to increase their numbers to get enough to sell to their customers, and vice versa. I'll do that on my end too if I need to supplement my inventory.
Okay, so 400 acres. Tell me about the process, because ag people love to know how stuff is produced because we are producers after all. Tell me how. Okay, you get a twig, a sapling, you stick it in the ground, and some rocky soil. Take me from there.
I'll do my best to try and make it quick. Obviously, it's a long process and a lot goes into it, but it starts with the seed that you get to produce the seedling. And we're looking for strong genetics with the seed. Many people, including our local association, have planted seed orchards to actually improve those genetics over the years, where we'll rogue out anything that we have a problem with, disease, needle loss, and try and up the genetics of those trees. And so, although a lot of seed is picked still out of natural forests, we're trying to always find the best genetics we can. That seed is taken to the nursery and planted in the nursery, either as a plug, which is grown in a greenhouse.
A plug is something about the size of my pen, yeah?
Maybe slightly bigger, would be grown in a styrofoam containers inside a greenhouse in a soil medium. And then the other common would be a bare root seedling, which would actually be produced outside. Seeds put in the ground and it's grown outside. That's usually comes out as what we would call a 2.0, which is a 2-year seedling. It can be a 3.0, so it takes a couple years to get those up. So while those are growing in the seedling, we're preparing our ground. If it's ground that's been in production, we'll grind the stumps out with a stump grinder, or some guys pull it with an excavator and burn the stumps off so that we can get in there and subsoil the ground and disc it and get the soil worked. And then we'll go in and plant either with a machine or shovel plant. If we're doing large plantings into new ground that's been disced up, we'll use a machine to do it. Once they're planted, after we let them grow for a year or two, of course, the whole time controlling weeds and whatnot, then we will basal prune the trees, which we call putting a handle on them, essentially taking the bottom branches off so that they grow up and have a handle on to fit in a tree stand.
Okay. So that's what basal trimming means. By the way, do you produce your own saplings, or you buy that from somebody that specializes just in taking them from seed to a 2-year-old sapling?
Yeah, we have somebody grow the sapling for us. We have our own seed that we give to them, and then they grow the seedling for us in the nursery. And we'll go pick that up out of their cooler and plant it each spring or fall.
All right. So you're sticking a 2-year-old, maybe a 3-year-old in the ground after you've ground out the stumps or excavated out the stumps, from the previous cuts, because obviously it's like a crop. It's like corn or soybeans or anything else. It's just that your crops take longer. You stick a 2-year-old in the ground. Starting when do you go out and do the trimming? A few more years?
Yeah, we'll wait maybe 2 years, and then we're actually in there and making sure they're growing up straight. So we'll put a stick in them and pull them over, cut out double tops in there to make sure they're growing correctly, and do that.
Cutting out double tops because everybody wants one top of a tree so they can put their star on it, right?
That's right. Yep. And when they're young, they will produce multiple kind of shoots coming out of there. So you want to make sure you're taking those out of there. So you just have them one solid shoot growing up throughout the process. So
you hire laborers to go out and do this tree trimming thing?
Yep. We on our farm we have our own crew. We have a couple guys that are working year round. Some guys use contract labor in the area.
And tell me about trimming them. What am I doing? Am I using a chainsaw? Am I using a machete? Am I using scissors? What am I doing to trim these trees up?
We're using pruners, Felco pruners, hand pruners. We'll just go out there and trim them up, and we use bamboo sticks and kind of like bread twisters. We call them twisty ties.
Yep. To shape the tree.
Yeah, to tie the leader up straight to the bamboo stick with the twisty ties.
All right. So most people probably want a 5 to 8 foot tall tree. When are we cutting these trees?
Well, it's going to obviously depend on species. They all grow at different rates. If you're talking a Douglas fir, which is very popular here in the Northwest, that's a faster growing tree. And you're going to harvest that probably between 6 and 8 years. And if you're talking a noble fir, which would be considered a more high-end tree, better needle retention, that can take, you might get in there at 8 years and harvest, maybe clear cut the field at 10, 11, 12 years.
Okay. So you said, for instance, I've got a 6 foot noble fir in my house. It did not come from you. It came from Washington State, and I bought it at Fry's, which is a Kroger outlet here in Arizona. That tree you said might have been 8 years old to get to be 6 foot tall. And is that 8 years from the time you put it in the ground, or 8 years from seed? Because it was 2 years when it came to your farm.
That would be 8 years on our farm.
Yeah. So
if you include
you got it.
Yeah, if you include the 2 years from the nursery, you're at 10 years there.
All right. So the way I got into this, the reason we're doing this topic is because of a Wall Street Journal article that was just this week saying that there's a Christmas tree shortage, and they quoted Mr. Grogan, and I went and found my friend here, Tim O'Connor, with the Christmas Tree Association. We're going to delve into that after we take this small commercial break to remind you that Harvest Profit is a software solution that you could utilize on your farming operation or any agricultural enterprise, I assume, where you have a lot of inputs and outputs and things that you need to track. Let's face it, it's beyond being able to just write this on the back of a seed corn pad. You've got a lot of dollars in play. Use a software solution that helps your operation be more profitable. Also, we're going to take this time to do a little toast. I should have told Tim and Casey we were going to do this, but the Georgia Agricultural Commodity Commission for Milk has me in working with them on a contractual promotional basis to help them sell more of this wonderful, nutritious white product. 34,000 dairy operations around the United States of America want you to remember that milk is good for you and it is good for the agricultural and rural economy. So you know what? Toast some milk. This time of year, Christmas, don't piss off Santa and put out some energy drink. Put out the real thing, milk. None of that nut milk crap. None of this rice milk stuff. There's no such thing. Those are alternative juices. They are not milk. Put the real thing out there, milk and cookies for Santa. All right. Tim O'Connor. I'm picking up my Wall Street Journal, and there it is right there. It says, tight Christmas tree supply means 8-footers can fetch $2,000. I read that headline. I'm like, $2,000? That was in Hong Kong, by the way. And then the article went on to say, as you and I both pointed out, the media sometimes wants to tell its own story, and they'll sometimes let facts get in the way of that. But usually, is there a Christmas tree shortage in the United States of America?
There's a tight supply as the supply has been reduced to balance with demand, but there's not a shortage. There's also, in my view, and Casey may disagree with me on this, but as I watch the industry from a national point of view, there's a wholesale distribution issue for certain. But the reality is the media has been talking about a shortage since 2015. Every year, there are a lot of stories. There's a shortage of Christmas trees. I have yet to hear any community in the entire United States of America that ran clear out of Christmas trees and you couldn't find one. And we all experienced in March and April, you couldn't find toilet paper. Right. You couldn't find flour. You couldn't find cleaning products. That's a shortage. You could buy a Christmas tree right up to December 24th in every community in America. That's not a shortage. Now, some farms and lots ran out, yes, but somewhere else not too far away, you could still buy a tree. So what happened is the industry had an oversupply for a long time, and agriculture is famous for this. Prices are good, we grow a lot. Suddenly, we grew too much. Prices go in the toilet. What do? Oh my God, that hurts. We plant less. Mm-hmm. But as you've been hearing from Casey, his cycle's a lot longer than a corn or soybean farmer.
Sure.
Once his trees are in the ground, those suckers keep growing. He's out there trimming them. Yep. He's taking care of them. And finally, they reach it to market. So that oversupply hung over the industry for a long time. So when finally growers had enough of that pain, and then we had a recession that hit that didn't help, they planted less trees. Well, now we have less trees, but it's right-sized to consumer demand. We sold 26.2 million trees last year.
26.2 million natural, real Christmas trees were sold in the United States of America, or is that all?
Yes, in the U.S., farm-grown trees from growers like Casey.
And that was last year. So this year, those numbers are going to be the same or up a little bit. Because I know that this article talked about everybody and their sister decided they're going to bake cookies because they're staying at home, which I'm not really convinced that these people are staying at home. When I drive by the Walmart, it doesn't look to me like everybody is staying at home. But anyway, they're buying more trees because of the smell, or they want to, rekindle their childhood or the joy. There was a bit more of a run on real Christmas trees this year than previous years because of the whole coronavirus thing. Am I right?
Absolutely right. Many of our members, and particularly those who are in the choose and cut portion of the business, are reporting record crowds. Yeah. And growers like Casey who are in the wholesale business, they've had buyers chasing them for the last 12 months. I want trees, I want trees, I want trees. And every wholesale grower sold every tree they had available.
Casey, question for you. I want to get back to that, Tim, but sorry.
Yeah.
In a year like this, you see these headlines, and then you hear that people are paying a lot. Do you think, hey, we got this one field over here. Let's just go ahead and put out the sign and say, choose and cut, or you pick, or whatever you call those things, and let the people come out there? Has that tempted you to go direct to consumer and put a little more margin in your pocket?
No, it's not. What's important to us is to continue to keep the relationship with our customer base that we've taken, decades to develop. And that means, if a guy's been buying 4,000 trees from you for 25 years, you want to have those 4,000 trees for that guy next year and the customers that are buying off of his lot. So I don't want to put a sign up out there and have people run in and cut all my trees out, and then I can't be loyal to those people that have been loyal to me.
Smart business. Back to Tim. Sorry, I interrupted you. You were talking about that. So 26.2 million. What's the expectation for this year? If 26.2 was 2019 numbers, are we going to sell 20% more than that this year?
It's hard to put a figure on it because, well, the supply has already been fixed. It was fixed 10 years ago when Casey and other growers put those trees in the ground. So with a surge in demand, we can't go just make new trees.
Right.
But what's going to happen, based on, we know, record numbers of people coming out to get trees, because 2020 has been such a crappy year that people did want to celebrate. And people who used to travel to grandma's house or wherever, or staying home, they want a tree. All that's going on. And we're hearing stories of, I haven't had a real tree in years, but we're going to get one this year, or I never had one, and we're going to get one this year. What we think is going to happen is there's going to be a more complete sell-through. We heard this from the garden center industry. We sell a lot of trees, as Casey was saying, through garden centers. And so we network with them. We actually, our lobbying side of our industry is in a partnership with the greenhouse and garden center industry. So we know them well. They had a record spring. Well, they didn't automatically have a whole bunch more plants to sell when April came around and they were getting run over by people that wanted to plant more stuff in their home gardens and yards because they were home more now. But they sold a higher percentage of their inventory. And that's what we're going to have. That, again, despite the headlines and screaming shortage, what we've seen every year is people end up on December 24th with trees that have been cut and they haven't sold them.
Yeah.
We didn't have a 100% sell through.
Right.
And so this year it's going to be a lot closer to that. So I don't know how many more trees will sell, but I think it'll be significant. We'll see it. We'll feel it. It's real. My growers are telling me, my members, that, the Christmas tree business is primarily done on 3 weekends, starting the day after Thanksgiving.
Yep.
Record number of people coming that weekend of Thanksgiving.
Yep.
Many sold out quicker than ever. We had some who opened a week early because so much demand was being asked of them by consumers. When you open, we can't wait. So, I've had conversations with the media in the last few days, about the shortage. And I'm like, you know what? It's pretty much over. 95% or more of the trees are sold already. It's already December 15th. We've had 3 big weekends of selling Christmas trees. They're pretty much all in the homes.
Yeah. Let's talk about money, if you're okay with that. I paid $54.99 for my Christmas tree. I think it was $55. It might have been $59.99, but I'm quite certain it was $54.99 because I pay attention as an agricultural economist, farm boy. Are you okay telling me how much of a $55 retail tree do you get, Casey?
I would say you're probably getting a pretty good price on that tree in your location there if it's a noble fir. We're getting, if that's the case, we're probably getting quite a bit of that. I think it's not uncommon at all for trees in places like Southern California to be selling for well over $100. And when you're looking at a tree like that, we're getting well under half of what that tree costs.
Okay. So Are you okay telling me that you get $30 to $40 for a 6-foot tree that sells for double that? Is that what we're talking about?
Approximately, yeah.
You might get half. You might get half of what retail price is, depending, of course, on what the retailer's charging.
Exactly.
Okay. So are you making money? Because I can talk to my corn and soybean people and they're like, hey, man, we bailed it out here at the end because commodity prices went up starting in July, which usually heading into harvest does not happen because it turns out the stock reports were off. And then we picked up a little bit of trade. So, prices rallied 20% up until then. These farmers thought, yeah, we're going to lose so many dollars per acre. Turns out they actually did end up about losing, depending on how their crop was marketed, so many dollars per acre. I'm wondering in the Christmas tree business, is I don't hear about the Farm Service Agency rolling out programs to prop up, Christmas tree growers the way they might for corn and soybean producers. Tell me a little bit about the money part of it, if you can.
Christmas tree business is what I would call the Wild West. There's not a whole lot of structure to it. They're all mostly handshake deals. As far as the prices, yes, we are making money now. Which is a relief because 10 years ago, we definitely were not. Trees were being sold at under the cost of production, and a lot of farmers went out of business. I think at least half in our area. And, not necessarily that they went out of business, but maybe switched to other crops. Christmas trees are extremely labor intensive, and it's a lot of work, to have all that, have to pay for all that labor and not make any money. So, I would say nowadays we're making a good profit on the trees, whether, supply and demand dictates all of that. And right now we're on the wholesale end in a good situation, but I'm sure it'll bounce back in reverse. We're just, as a grower, I'm hoping for all these wild swings that we've had to not be so wild. And I think consumers are probably hoping for that as well, I would think.
Absolutely. Mr. Tim, you talked about the difference between choose and cut. Mom and dad come out with the sleigh and go out. I toured a place in my home state of Indiana about a decade ago, and they talked about the 3-weekend situation. And then they would get there's an organization that has these like dogs that pull sleds, and that was one of their little offerings. That way, people got to play with the dogs and feed them a milk bone and all this kind of thing. So it's a very special event. It's also a very time crunch event. You got 3 weeks out of 52 to do that. What's the split between guys like Casey and then somebody that does the choose and cut? How many of the trees are cut by mom and dad and the kids with a sleigh?
It's about a 75-25 split. About 75% of business is done as pre-cut wholesale trees.
People like Casey Grogan.
People like Casey. There's a little bit of a funny wrinkle in there that a third of the trees are sold on farms, but the choose and cut grower will bring trees in from another grower like Casey to either supplement the total number of trees they have or the types of tree varieties they have to offer, because trees grow in different regions of the country. So, your grower in Indiana isn't growing the noble firs or the Fraser firs that are grown in the East. So they'll typically, if they have a good customer base, want to bring them in. And so in addition to the trees that they grow on their farm, they have a display of pre-cut trees. So about a third are sold on the farm, but about 75% are pre-cut and sold at some form of retail.
Certainly. Makes sense. Hey, Casey, back to money. Everybody talks about, one of my farmer buddies back in Indiana used to be singing the blues by about mid-late summer because, cash flow situations. You've got a bunch of stuff you can sell right out of the field. And I said, you plant some wheat. Just plant some wheat out there so you can at least have some something to sell right out of the field in July. You definitely have a seasonality. You start cutting these trees, I'm assuming sometime in the fall. Give me the thing about that. You're selling all your trees in about, all of your crop happens in sells about between October something and November something, right?
Yeah, that's right. Actually, the majority of it is shipped out on the wholesale end, like we're doing the week before Thanksgiving. Probably I would say 85% of our crop is shipped out in 10 days. On maybe 150 trucks that come through our farm in 10 days, and they're gone. As far as cash flow goes, yeah, I mean, it's you got to be organized. Lots of growers have other crops they're working with. We don't. We're strictly Christmas trees. So, yeah, you just hope you make enough to cash flow throughout the year, and if you don't, you go find yourself an operating line and just try to make it season to season.
That's the story of production agriculture. 400 acres you guys produce. You've got a couple of hired hands. Like you said, it's a very labor intensive business. You do keep those hired guys with you all year long, right?
Yep.
So based on the time horizon, I'm going to say then of the 400 acres you've got, you're turning over about 40 to 60 of those acres every year. Is that the right
Pretty
number?
accurate. Yep.
Okay. How many trees does that amount to? I know it varies by species a little bit, but roughly speaking, how many trees per acre?
It depends on what kind of spacing you're planting these trees on, and everybody can do that a little bit differently. We're on our farm recently. We've been planting on a 5.5 by 4 spacing, and are getting close to 2,000 trees an acre.
Okay, at 5.5 by 4 spacing, that's 2,000 trees per acre.
Roughly.
Yeah, I got it. That's good. And dear listener, if you don't know this, an acre is 43,560 square feet. So if you do those math right there, 43,560 square feet and divide it out, then they'll probably give you the spacing that Casey just talked about. The industry, 26.2 million trees. I don't know if you're allowed to tell me what the gross is at the farm level, but it's a business. This guy is trying to make a living out here at Silver Bells Tree Farm. What battles do you face, Tim? What battles do you face besides imported plastic crap from China that people call Christmas trees? Besides that, what are you facing?
Well, I'm going to have to say though, Damian, that's number one, without a doubt.
Which thing?
The imported crap.
Yeah.
From China. That's number one. That stole a bunch of market share over the years.
Yep.
Number two is really the misinformation, the misunderstanding that people have about a real Christmas tree. Some people think a real tree is bad for the environment because they think they're all growing in the forest.
Yeah.
And they've been taught since they, were in kindergarten, you don't cut trees down.
Yeah.
And they don't understand it's a crop that growers like Casey spend a lot of time preparing. And as soon as they harvest it, they plant the next crop in the ground. And so it's a perpetual production system on a farm. It's not a tree in the forest. When you cut it, it's gone forever.
Right.
They also don't understand, I like to put this thought in people's head, picture 2 videos on your screen. There's 2 kinds of family Christmas. You can have one where the family gets in the car and goes somewhere to find a real tree, whether it's at a lot or a farm, but there's a hunt, there's an experience of picking out that real tree, and, the smell and the whole thing. You put it on the car, you drive it home, all kinds of fun stuff happens. Or you got the family on the other screen. Dad drags a dusty box out of somewhere, bangs his head on the pipes or the attic beam, cusses like a sailor, slaps that piece of plastic up, and there's your Christmas, boys and girls. Yeah. And it's, which Christmas do you want for your family? And, it's a matter of education. And what we're seeing, and it's good news, is that as these younger generations of consumers come of age and they have their own families, they care about the environment. They make spending decisions. And when they're educated to understand that, as the cowboys in the beef industry I used to work for would say, it's fall off your horse simple. Growing a tree on a farm is better for the environment than a PVC plastic tree made in a factory in China. Yeah. That's a no-brainer.
I appreciate you saying that. You know, before I ever even had this podcast started, I was the Christmas tree proponent. My wife and I go to a grocery store here in Arizona where we spend our winters, and we pick up a real tree. And I always put it on social media. I always take pictures of it. And this year I made a spoof that we hopped on the sleigh, which was the Ford F-150, and glided through the wintry meadow on a 72-degree afternoon in Phoenix. But it's very important to me because it is an agricultural product. A Chinese-made artificial tree is bad for the environment. It's using fossil fuels to be, I find it interesting. The same folks that think, I shouldn't cut down a tree, somehow the same people are protesting against, driving their Prius and protesting against all these environmental wrongs, slap up a plastic tree. So I'm a big proponent of it. I want to support guys like Casey. How many Christmas tree farmers are there in the United States of America? Anybody?
Roughly 15,000.
15,000. And then you being the number one state, are 1/3 of them, 1/5 of them? How many are in just Oregon?
Oregon's probably harvesting in the range of 5 to 6 million trees a year.
Well, that's a lot. So on 400 acres, does that make you a normal sized, big sized, little sized Christmas tree producer?
I would say maybe medium to large. I suppose there's probably a handful of farms that are extremely large in our area. We're certainly not one of those, but there's not a whole lot of medium-sized farms actually either. Most farms are going to be under 100 acres probably.
They're going to be around 100 acres or less. Well, is it because the
100
labor, I
acres or less.
suppose? Yeah. You said something really interesting, Tim. You said that the issue of misunderstanding, that, some poor little kid has a bleeding heart school teacher that tells him that, cutting down trees means that Bambi doesn't have a place to live or some crazy stuff like that, when in reality, it's an agricultural product. It's very good for the environment because trees on a 5.5 by 4 foot spacing, you're making sure you talk about carbon sequestration right there, what we're doing good for the environment. And obviously it's habitat also. There's wildlife that lives in his fields, and there's the respiration and transpiration, all those things about our hydrologic cycle that happen. So it's all very, very good. Maybe then I would encourage the people listening or watching this podcast, share this with anybody so then they can understand what good things come out of Christmas tree production. Tell me something else that the average person doesn't know about the industry or Christmas trees in general. Either of you. Tim, start.
Well, I'll add to that because that environmental story is really a big part of converting people over. But the other part, again, with these young consumers is they like to spend their money where they know where it's going, and they like to support local businesses. And so buying a farm-grown Christmas tree hits that square in the bullseye.
Yeah.
You're buying a tree. You can know the story of where the tree came from. You can understand it was done on a farm that employs people and buys goods and services in the local community, instead of buying a hunk of plastic that was made in the factory in China by a nameless, faceless corporation. So that's a positive thing that's resonating as well with young consumers. And, all these stories add up. I mean, when you start looking at the things that people value today and the direction that I think younger consumers are going, it's really all in favor of a real tree. And the idea that this unfortunate pandemic we're all living with has put some push towards people having a more traditional Christmas experience, a more authentic, real Christmas experience. I think it's all going to be quite positive for the industry. And I think the other thing that I think is really interesting about Christmas trees, to me, as a longtime fan of Christmas trees before I ever started working with the industry, is it's just one of the more interesting and enjoyable parts of agriculture. You've got these beautiful trees. If you ever see a Christmas tree farm, it's talk about a postcard picture. Yeah. They're just gorgeous. And the joy they bring, they're produced just for families to bring home and celebrate in their home. That's the whole point of having one.
I mean, you're preaching the choir here. My wife and I, it is a tradition. We put up that real tree. I would never have an artificial. I have I have a little teeny bush that we put in my office, and it's only so I can put the leg lamp lights on it from A Christmas Story. But we have our Christmas tree people. The joy, like you said, is very important. We put on Christmas music, we decorate it, and it's just, it's my one night of being like HGTV. And before I started wintering in Arizona, when I was still back at my farm year round, I always thought it was also neat that I could support a local cause. I would buy my Christmas trees from the Lions Club because they use their money to do what Lions Club do, helping children and eyesight and, eyeglasses for the poor and things like that. So that's the other great part about it. Something about Christmas trees that I wouldn't know, or you'd like people to know, or just something you want to share with us, Mr. Casey.
The one thing, I guess since we're on the topic, I just want to thank people that are buying a real tree. Being the farmer that grows them, I really appreciate the people that go out and support me as a farmer here in the United States, rather than supporting something that's imported from overseas. I think Tim might have the exact number, but I believe most of the trees displayed in America, I think it's close to 80% are actually artificial trees. Yeah. And so, it's a serious concern for us that that's going to keep cutting into our market share, and we're just going to dwindle away, especially with the Christmas tree industry as a whole getting older and older. It's been great during this pandemic to see people have this resurgence of wanting to go out and have an experience of a real Christmas tree. I kind of wish the supply situation was different right now, and that trees were a little cheaper for everyone. I understand they're a little more expensive than they want them to be, but boy, we sure appreciate people supporting us.
Yeah, I was going to buy one no matter what, because that's just how I do things. Now, I know there's some folks that aren't as fortunate, but I appreciate you guys being on here. This has been a fun episode, and I'm glad we can also correct the thing. And hey, you know what? I don't think anybody listening to this, unless they're listening from Hong Kong, had to pay $2,000, but that's apparently what a Christmas tree went for in Hong Kong. You know what? I'm guessing you'd cover the shipping. If you could sell, I bet you, Casey, Silver Bells Tree Farm, if you wanted to figure out a way, you'd probably cover the shipping if you could get $2,000 for all your trees, couldn't you?
Yeah, absolutely. Looks like I need to make an export price list.
It sounds like it. All right. If people want to contact you because they have a question about Christmas trees, they want the real data, not the media-driven agenda that there's shortages, that we're all dying, that there's no Christmas tree. If they want to find you, Tim O'Connor, National Christmas Tree Association, your website.
It's realchristmastrees.org, or if you Google National Christmas Tree Association, it comes up.
What's that?
If you Google National Christmas Tree Association, it goes right there.
And so if a person listening to this says, I'd like to hear some of that data, or if you want to sound smart at the Christmas family get-together, if you're not in California, you're allowed to get together with your family at Christmas. You can sit there and say, did you know there's 15,000 Christmas tree growers in the United States of America? And there's about 5 million acres of Christmas tree farms in just Oregon, the #1 producing state. So you can share all these data points. And you can go there. And if they want to find you at Silver Bells Tree Farm, Mr. Casey Grogan.
silverbellsblue.com is our website, or you can Google Silver Bells Tree Farm and we should pop up. And my email's on there, and just shoot us an email.
I really appreciate you guys being on here. It's a great topic. I was glad to cover it. And you know what, dear listener, last reminder that this podcast was brought to you by the good people at Harvest Profit. You can go to harvestprofit.com and use their software for a 14-day free trial. So if you want to look at the new year and say, I want to be more profitable, I want to look at my agricultural enterprise with a different lens, start by going to harvestprofit.com and seeing if that software will work for you. And also thank you to our friends at the Georgia Agricultural Commodity Commission for milk. I drink all my milk. It's whole milk because you know what? Whole milk is 96.75% fat-free for those of you that are concerned about it. Thanks a lot for being on. Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas to you, Casey. I'm glad you had a good year. Tim, keep fighting a good fight for real Christmas trees. And you got a fan right here.
Thank you,
Merry
Damian.
Christmas, everyone. Thanks, Damian.
Thanks for being on. Till next time, it's the Business of Agriculture.